Have you ever wondered how ancient people viewed the world we live in? Welcome to this exciting episode of our podcast. I'm your host, Anthony. Join us today is one of the most influential painters in 20th century China. We will dive into the artist's journey, creative process, and the inspiration behind his masterpiece. Moreover, we will explore how he feels about modern Chinese art. So, without further ado, let's welcome Qi Baishi. Qi Baishi, it is undoubtedly true that you are the greatest artist in 20th century Chinese society. In that era, people who became famous artists were either from rich families or were governmental officials. People from villages or rural areas mostly become workers or laborers. Why do you choose to be an artist?
Straightforward one. I was born into a very poor family. At that time, only my father and grandfather had a job, but they earned so little and cannot feed all five of us. So, I had to start working at a very young age. Our family made clothes by exchanging the grains my mother grew for cotton, which she used to make the clothes herself. I am very grateful to my grandfather because even in our impoverished state, he insisted on teaching me how to read and write when I was just 4 years old. By the time I was 5, I could already write over 300 characters. Seeing my talent, my family decided to do whatever it took to send me to school. In the schools back then, if you wanted to practice calligraphy, all you did was copy the characters written by ancient people. I was so young at that time that I got bored after a while. So, I started drawing in secret, putting in great effort to depict animals around me realistically. Gradually, I developed an interest in art. Although my family saw my artistic pursuits as a waste of time and I often got punished, I couldn't give up my passion for painting.
Something
Yes.
you won't be willing to spend more time on it. Before becoming an artist, you also experience various other occupations like chopping wood, herding cattle, and working as a carpenter. Do you think these experiences had any influence on your journey to become an
Some
artist?
education. My father asked me to learn a trade when I was 15. Due to my small physique and weak body, I couldn't do the farm work, so my father arranged for me to work in a carpentry shop where a master named Zhu taught me how to carve flowers from wood. Since I had previously drawn secretly, my observation skills were quite strong. Apart from flowers, I also added grass, insects, fish, and other elements to create a complete composition in this craft. I enjoyed this work and was quite skilled at it. Yet, a few years later, when I accidentally saw some of my earlier drawings from my school days, I realized that many of them had significant flaws. When I drew people, their heads were either too big or their feet were too long. When I drew flowers and plants, they weren't in the right proportion. That's when I decided to start learning painting from scratch, using the money I earned from working as a carpenter to buy paint, brushes, and paper for my secret practice.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how woodworking in the early stage influenced your artistic creation in the later parts of your life?
Woodworking has an intrinsic connection to nature, much like my painting, and this deep relationship with the natural world has influenced much of my work. A sense of harmony, balance, and the richness of texture I experienced in working with wood seeped into my artistic aesthetic. Working with wood taught me patience and respect for every line and curve, just as one would respect every stroke on a canvas. The grain of the wood, the way it can be worked and shaped, influenced my understanding of lines and form in painting. The simplicity of the materials, the directness of the process, it all correlates with the ethos of my painting. The strength and resilience of wood, its ability to weather storms and still stand tall, inspired me to capture a similar strength and vibrancy in my art. My art, especially my ink wash paintings, bear the imprint of this understanding. In each stroke, I attempt to capture the essence of my subject, much like carving a piece of wood. I always believed in the philosophy of capturing the spirit over the form, which has its roots in my early years as a carpenter. In a way, I owe much to my years as a carpenter. It provided me with a perspective and experience that I could translate onto the canvas. It's not the literal translation of the act of woodworking into painting, but the underlying principles and the philosophical aspects that left a significant impact on my work.
Can you talk a little bit more about when you say the spirit over the form?
When I say spirit over the form, I'm referring to capturing the intangible qualities, emotions, and energy of the subject rather than just its external shape or form. Painting a tree, instead of focusing solely on its exact shape, size, or the number of leaves, I would aim to capture its essence, the way it sways in the wind, the feeling it evokes, its age, its wisdom, and its place in the surrounding environment. It's about portraying the tree's character, its history, and its spirit.
And has this focus on spirit prolonged into your work as a painter? Please elaborate.
When I turned 26, I had been painting portraits for a few years. People in the neighborhood knew that the carpenter had switched to become a painter, and they said my paintings were even better than the carved flowers. My portrait paintings became more refined, and the key was that there was a sense of poetry given the focus on spirit. Going even deeper, I decided to study with Master Lai, and he advised me to learn poetry before painting, saying that a good painting without poetry is always lacking something. From that moment on, I developed my skills in painting and writing poetry simultaneously. Photography was not yet popular back then, and the art of portraiture could still earn money, meaning drawing people's portraits. Wealthy people would have a few portraits done during their lifetime and even have one painted after they passed away as a memorial.
I see. It seems that Mr. Qibaishi's journey to fame is not easily replicated. Are you curious about how Chinese people today can become artists?
I am quite curious.
Currently, many artists in China criticize this examination based system. For example, the well known artist Chen Danqing has strongly criticized this examination phenomenon in his interviews. He believes that art education in China is a dead end, a disaster. He says that internationally renowned masters like Guan Yun and Van Gogh are relatively slow learners, especially Van Gogh, who was the slowest. Yet, these seemingly dense individuals had an imperceptible inner depth that manifested in their artworks. In the words of Lao Tzu, their painting was truly profound yet appearing foolish.
Profound yet appearing foolish? That's a fascinating concept. These individuals with wild imaginations indeed possess exceptional talent. Their sketching techniques are impressive too, meticulously drawing each twig. These paintings depict quite humble scenes.
Exactly. Chen Nanqing views these as true artworks, born from the minute of life. But he also mentioned that for nearly 30 years, Chinese art college storerooms have been filled with thousands of beginner artworks from exam candidates. These students exhibit high technical proficiency, like this detail portrait. Even Van Gogh might not be able to create this. If Van Gogh present this in China, he might not even pass the exam due to his lack of standard technicality. But when Chen Nanqing compares these students' exam works with the painting that was not restricted by those standards, he was shocked. He'd rather never paint again. When these students reflect on their works, they realize that their efforts doesn't contribute to the art. The focus on exam techniques and adaptation might limit their creativity and imaginative development, causing them to lose their individuality and uniqueness in artistic creation.
Well, in my master's time, there was no such thing as art exams. Masters took on apprentices to pass down their painting methods. Shen Shi often didn't teach me how to formulaically draw an object. He taught me to observe common vivid colors and integrate them into ink wash painting, infusing the soul into my work. Comparing my young self to current art students, my direction was about connecting with the world through the heart, while they bury their heads in memorization, striving to reproduce what their teachers require.
I guess that's why your paintings are so amazing, so soulful. Thank you for providing such a deep comment on the Gaokao system.
Thank you too.